Hello and welcome to the Rambling Robin podcast. I am Robin, and today I want to ramble about some things that I want to just get off my chest, I guess. And today I actually wanted to get back to the topic that I was supposed to talk about a little bit last episode, and that is storytelling. I've touched on this subject a little bit. I think about 2 episodes ago. It's only been 4 episodes before this one, I believe. And so, yeah, I kind of want to just get to it. So, previously, I've talked a little bit about what kind of storytelling I want to do when it comes to this story that I'm working on, Trolldom, working title. And I've been thinking of different stories that I want to take inspiration from. So last time I talked about what works of fiction that have inspired my basically the aesthetics and the setting of the story that I'm making. And now I kind of want to talk about, okay, how do I want to try to structure my story and stuff like that? What kind of things do I want to think about when creating this? And I think one of the more important topics that I want to focus on for this story is, or maybe not topic, but it's just something like I really, really want to make it very prevalent in the story that I'm making, and that is the magic system. And of course, it is a fantasy setting with its own magic system. Of course, I want to make that an important part, but I kind of want to. I've been focusing so much on it that I feel that I can make something really interesting where it kind of becomes its own science in a way. If we think almost similar as to how alchemy works in Full Metal Alchemist, where with the equivalent exchange and everything, where in that world, if you want to create something, you need to have something of the same value essentially in order to do it. And then of course there exist exceptions and stuff like that. For example, like what is the value of a human soul, right? And apparently you can I don't know, look up game theory, did a little thing about that, I guess. But just stuff like that, where the magic system feels very like rigid. It feels very solid in like these things are what's possible, but there is still like there's room for the magic system to have flaws or change and stuff like that. Maybe not flaws. Is not the right word. It can be, I guess, abused to a certain degree. Like people will find like loopholes in the magic system, in a way. And I want to make like maybe. So what I've been thinking about is creating a kind of a murder mystery, like for the initial start of the story, and maybe I'll try to make the mystery part like magic will play a huge role in that setting. It's not just thinking about, okay, let's find the guys who were responsible, but like, no, how did this happen? Maybe we already figure out in like the first or second chapter, this guy did it, but we can't pin it on him. So we need to figure out how the hell he did it, or something to that degree. So that's kind of what I want to do. And in order to do that properly, I really need to focus a lot, or not, maybe not. I need to like try to establish fairly early on in the story how the magic system actually works, so people who actually read the story will be able to kind of see how, or like maybe deduce themselves, like who did it and how, or something like that. So that is one of the things that I'm thinking about doing. And also previously I talked about trying to do similar, and I guess most of the things that I'll be talking about, like I want to do this and that, I'll be making comparisons to other like stories, stuff that I've read or watched or something like that. So in case you don't know it, I guess have Google at the ready while listening to this or watching this if you're on YouTube. But like, so similarly to if you've ever read One Piece, or you could just look it up, in between chapters there is usually some kind of like illustration that the author Ichiro Oda has made. Many times it's just a request by a reader, like please draw this character doing this or something like that, to that degree. And sometimes it's just a fun illustration, or it's something like maybe it's like a color spread even, for different like special occasions. But a lot of times, especially early on in the series, they used these one, like just this one page to tell small side stories that like, and most of them, how do I explain this properly? They used them to tell smaller side stories that eventually made their way into the main story, so to say. Like, and sometimes they didn't actually, or like they haven't as of yet, I guess you should say. They're basically like just lore. It's just like a one page, like a picture says more than 1,000 words, and then we add like 6 or 7 words, I guess, just to like, this what happened since we left this character. Well, this character is up to this, and then there's maybe like 4 to even like 10 or 20 of these one page illustrations that just show what this character is up to and what happens to them. And I kind of want to do something to that effect in this story. And maybe I won't release them with every new chapter or whatever, like however I decide to structure this story. But I kind of want to do this at least as a way to start off, like just getting to drawing something in this, and because it won't be as much of a commitment to just do these small illustrations that I can kind of use in the future to just fluff out the story, so to say. And so that's something that I feel like that would be really fun to do. And then I could do just like, maybe it's not one page about like what this character is doing right now when we're not focusing on them, but maybe it's like, this is when the character showed up to town, or this is what they did previously, like just to get a little bit more of a story on the side of the story, so to say. And maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe I should just like actually focus on just creating the main story and not get like sidetracked, I guess you could say. And that is a like, I'm just now, when I'm saying it out loud, maybe that is the way I should go about this. Maybe I shouldn't be doing these side things to a story that I've barely even started on. Like I said before, I've written down a few settings, I've written down a lot about the magic system, I've written down a few characters and a few plot points that I want to implement, but that is about it. And most of these things, except for like the main character and maybe 1 or 2 of the other side characters that I've written down anything about, they're the only one. Like aside from that, almost nothing that I've written down is going to be relevant within like the first, let's say, 5 to 10 chapters, if even within that time span. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle for me to to get this thing going properly, to create this story. But that is it is a part of why I'm doing this. I just want to create something, and I guess just gonna go sidetrack a little bit as I usually do. Just talking about like. Me personally, like I just love creating stuff. Like I've always wanted to be like a storyteller kind of person, even when I was a kid, when I was like playing with my brother or playing with a few of my friends and stuff like that. And this is back when I was really young, I was almost always the one who tried to like steer the story. Like I always like had this image in my head, like, okay, and then this happens and this happens, okay, and now the guy, he says this, all right, and then you come in and then like play out. I feel like almost like kind of like I guess you could say like a director to what do you I'm totally blanking on the word, to an improv, like kind of like an improv director. Like, now you enter the scene and then just play out the scene. All right, cool. now because like I guess like a dungeon master. um, but people do they have LARP dungeon master? I'm assuming they do. So I guess like when I was a kid, I was somewhat of a LARP dungeon master. We didn't have any rules as to what was possible in the world because then none of the other kids probably would have wanted to play, right? Um, or yeah, whatever, most likely. So I've always liked doing that. I've always wanted to tell stories, and even like in school when they're like, "All right, we're gonna write a little bit. We're gonna write a little story today, and everybody like write down 2 pages of a little story, and then hand it in, and we'll grade it." And like I'm sitting there like second or third grade, I'm like, "Oh, 2 pages aren't. That's just not enough. How am I supposed to tell a story when 2 pages barely gets me through the introduction of the character?" Something like that. I've always liked doing that. Me and one of my friends when I was a kid, we started drawing comic books, or like comic books in quotation marks. We would just draw like a bunch of random pictures with characters that we liked, and basically just add a story to it. Like, no, they did this war and then they murdered each other. I think I called it. I think I called my story "The Legend of the Murderers" or something, because that was cool. I was 7 or 8 years old, and that was just calling like guys murderers was like they were badass cool, which is like kind of twisted when you think about it. My parents like, "Oh, it's so nice. Oh, you're drawing. Oh, it looks so good. Legend of the Murders. Wow, that's really interesting." But I also did some stuff like I got really inspired by. I think it's actually an anime. It was. I have barely any memories of it. It was basically just like an educational show or something. Think. What is it called now? Oh, I'm blanking on the name. Something cells. It's an anime about some cells. Cells at work. So imagine basically a different, like a way older cells at work, and with less of an actual storyline, I believe. I barely even remember, but I got really inspired by that, and then I drew these little comics about like, oh, okay, so this is a human body, and in this human body, the blood cells are running around carrying stuff. Like I guess like I bet that my parents like they read that and they're like, oh my god, he's gonna be a doctor, or he's gonna be drawing comics for the rest of his life. And I don't know if they're disappointed or not, but here I am. I'm only drawing stuff, and I'm not very successful at it yet. Well, what are you gonna do? They should have just pushed me, right? Whatever. So I did stuff like that, and as I was growing up, like I wanted to be a comic book artist, I wanted to be a manga artist, I wanted to be an animator. I've always wanted to create stuff. Like I think it was like 8th or 9th grade, we had a little like project where we were divided into groups, and these groups we had to do like a little commercial thing. And the group of friends that I were in, we were a group of friends. Like either you picked your own group, or we were like super lucky in that we all got put together. But we created this little commercial thing, and like I thought of like the story and like like not a jingle, but like a catchphrase for the product in quotation marks that we were trying to sell. And that was a lot of fun, and that inspired me to like, okay, I'm gonna when I go to high school, I guess. So the Swedish equivalent of high school, we call it gymnasium. It's similar to high school in many countries, but to like it kind of depends on what school you go to. So the school that I went to was heavily focused on like digital media, or rather the course I took. It's so hard to explain when it's not really a thing in other countries, but basically from age 15 to 18, I was studying like digital media, basically at high school. So we did like things like learning Photoshop, like video editing, photography, photo editing, and like web design, stuff like that. Because that's like I got really inspired to do that because of the little thing that we did in 8th or 9th grade. because I was like, oh my God, I could just like, this could be like a job. I just like think of interesting commercials because people want to pay you to just think of like interesting ways to sell a product. That seems like so much fun. And I still think it could be. But that's not what I want to do anymore. Or like, I've like, the more I think about it, like I want to be an artist. I want to draw stuff. So here I am. And that kind of like, so I kind of kept doing the thing where maybe I'll be a web developer. Maybe I'll be a graphic designer, because graphic design is also a lot of fun. And it seems like you'll be able to find a job a little bit easier than if you want to be just an artist and illustrator, something like that. And I still think it rings a little bit more true, because more companies need someone to do graphic design than they need someone to just draw a picture of a man in a field or something. I don't know. But either way, I kind of dropped that and I decided, like, no, I want to do games. When I was a kid, I was interested in games, and then I wanted to do games, but I'm an artist. I don't want to do coding. I want to draw. I want to animate and stuff like that. And then I kind of tried to do that thing and whatever. It's always like, ever since I was a kid, it's always been about creating stuff. Like, even to a certain degree, when it came, like in high school, when I would do like a project, and they would be like, well, you want to like make a chair. Like, you want to have a chair in this picture. And I'm like, yes, it's so hard drawing a chair at this angle. And they're like, well, just take a chair from another picture. And to me, that was like, that is blasphemy. How could you do that? That is stealing someone else's product. And I want to create this product on my own. I want to do this myself. And it's been one thing that's been holding me back a lot. I haven't been able to just let go of that and just do, like, basically rely on other people's work to make things easier for myself. Because I've just been so focused on trying to create something of my own, like this is my thing, I made this, right? Which, skipping ahead about like 8 or 9 years, I guess, started working on a game with one of my friends. It didn't really fall through, but he kind of lost motivation to work on it. And then I don't want to just do art for that game that might not even like become something in the future, even though like, oh, you'll be experienced, you'll be making just assets. And I'm like, no, I want to do something that I can like show, like, this is a finished product, and that's why I'm working on Trolldom. Where did I start this rant? Something about I've always wanted to create. Wow, that went on for like, I guess I told that little story like 7 or 8 minutes it took. Goddamn. Where was I? All right, I'm sorry. I started just rambling there for like a full minute and a half. So I'm sorry about that. But storytelling. So I have like a few inspirations when it comes to that as well. Like, I kind of want to create a story basically around the magic system. I want the magic systems to be a very, very intricate part of the story, but I don't want it to be the entire story, which is, of course, like it would be a real huge undertaking to try to create a whole story about only the magic system, right? It needs to be something more relatable. It can't just be a fucking illustration book about this magic system, though that could be something for the future if this I guess IP if this story that I'm making, if it ever like becomes popular, I could possibly do that, I guess. But that's besides the point. I wanted to create a story with a very rigid magic system that I can focus a lot, or like basically lean on a lot to help the story move along, right? And I kind of like, I'm still thinking about, I kind of want to do these little side illustrations just to help flesh out the world, so to say. And besides those two things, like what else do I want to focus on when it comes to the storytelling? Like, I do want to focus on the characters to a certain degree. Like, I have a lot of interesting character ideas, but I can't just like throw them all in there, right? So I have to introduce them gradually, and they can't all like the characters that I've thought of so far. I can't just introduce them like one at a time. I need to have like other, I guess you should say, like filler characters in between, because otherwise it will seem like this world is, or at least like this place where, or this setting where it takes place, is just like chock full of just these amazing people. And then like I'll put such a huge such a high I don't know how to explain that. Basically, if I'm only creating gods, the humans will seem lame in comparison to an extent, right? So I can't like I need to have more characters that are not like the amazing man who's just fucking awesome because he's the son of a god or something like that, right? I need to have more just regular dudes. Like maybe the childhood friend of the main character is just some fucking guy or something, right? So that's something that I need to focus a little bit more on now that I'm getting closer and closer to actually just drawing the first page, or at least like sketching up the like a first draft for the first page at least. And the closer I get to that, I'm realizing more and more like, oh, I'm not done yet. I need to have these things, but I really just need to get to that point where I start sketching down the first page just to get the ball rolling, right? But I still need a few more characters, basically just contradicting what I said 10 seconds ago. But yeah, what else is there that I want to focus on? Yeah, and I guess one thing that I want to kind of implement into the story in some kind of way is like I forget the technical term, or maybe it's not the technical, just I forget what term you use for it, but it's basically I need to have the character that asks questions, the character that doesn't know how this world works, the character that has no idea about this magic system. Like I need to have some character that asks questions. Whoops, whoa, my mic just started twisting around there on its own. No, it got caught in my fucking whatever. Yeah. So I need to have that character, like the third person, who's like, what? How can he do this magic? Why can't you do that magic? Why doesn't everybody use this type of magic? Stuff like that. I need to find a way to implement that character into the story somehow. And I guess that is the most difficult part right now, because kind of like the main character can't be that character, because this is not an isekai, and I don't want it to be. This story is not an isekai. So this character, he's grown up in this world. He knows about the magic system. Even though he might not be the best at it, he might not even be very skilled at it. He needs to know how these things works, because he's like in his, I think like I've decided it's a guy in his early 20s. I wonder how you picked that, right? Who would have thought? It was basically between, is he a teenager or is he in his early 20s? Because I don't want to write a kid. And I want this story to be kind of brutal in a sense, very adult. And because of that, I don't want to write a kid. I don't want to write, well, I'll have kids. Kids will be in the story, but the main character is not going to be a kid. So it's basically like, is he a teenager or is he early 20s? Because I don't want to write about an older man, or I don't want the main character to be an older man. And I don't feel very confident about writing a female character or main character yet, at least. But yeah, what else is there? I feel like every time I try to get deep, like start talking about one of these subjects, I kind of just dance around them. Like, yeah, in this story, I want to have characters and I want to focus on the important stuff, right? It feels like that's what I've been saying for the last 20 minutes or so. And then, except for those 7 or 8 minutes that I just rambled about why I like telling stories, and that I always like telling stories, I guess. But either way, I guess that's going to be it for today. A little bit longer than my other episodes, but that is fine. I actually want to make these episodes even longer, but I really need to write down what... But that's going to be it for this episode of Rambling Robin, the Rambling Robin podcast. I have been Robin, or I am still Robin, and I'll be in the next episode. So if you want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, my Instagram is Mr. Goblinair, or my Twitter is Robin Doff, ROBINDOFF. And my art station is Doffman. So if you want to follow me on any of those, feel free to do so. You can also subscribe to me on YouTube, which is also Doffman. But I'll see you in the next episode, and have a great time, and stay cool. Yeah, stay cool.